It's 3 a.m. The room is dark, the house is quiet, and your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Nothing. But your mind has other plans. You're replaying a conversation from 3 days ago, analyzing a decision you made in 2019, rehearsing arguments with people who aren't in the room. And the more you notice you can't sleep, the less likely you are to sleep. This isn't a modern problem, but the way we experience it might be.
For most of human history, sleep didn't look like what we do now. Historian A. Roger Eckerch spent over 2 decades combing through pre-industrial records, diaries, court documents, medical texts, and published his findings in the American Historical Review in 2001. Before artificial light, people across Europe slept in 2 distinct segments, separated by an hour or more of wakefulness in the middle of the night. They called it the watch, and during that time, they didn't panic. They talked, prayed, interpreted their dreams, or simply lay with their thoughts. The middle of the night mind was considered a different kind of mind, more reflective, more honest.
The psychiatrist Thomas Ware replicated something close to this in an experiment published in the Journal of Sleep Research in 1993. He gave healthy subjects 14 hours of darkness per night for a month. Within weeks, without being told to, most shifted into 2-phase sleep. A period of wakefulness emerged naturally around midnight. During this window, prolactin levels, a hormone associated with deep calm, spiked unusually high. Participants described quiet alertness, not anxiety, not productivity, just openness. So, if midnight waking is potentially normal, why does it feel so wrong?
Part of the answer is what the brain is actually doing when we think it should be offline. During sleep, particularly during REM and the transitions in and out of deeper stages, the default mode network becomes highly active. This is the brain's introspective circuit, associated with self-referential thought, memory consolidation, and mental simulation of future scenarios. The sleeping brain isn't passive, it's processing, tagging emotional memories, working through unresolved information from the day.
The problem is that this system doesn't distinguish between useful rehearsal and recursive anxiety loops. At 3 a.m., with no new sensory input to redirect attention, that machinery runs unchecked. There's also a physiological factor. Cortisol, the stress hormone, follows a circadian rhythm, beginning to rise as early as 2 to 3 a.m., and peaking around 8 to 9 a.m. Sleep research has shown this early rise correlates with lighter sleep stages and more frequent spontaneous awakening. Combined with an active default mode network, you get a brain that is alert, inward-focused, and primed for vigilance, not rest.
Some researchers argue this was adaptive. In an evolutionary context, lighter sleep in the early morning, when temperatures drop and camps go cold, may have had survival value. The mind running through unresolved problems during that window wasn't malfunctioning. It was doing what minds do when given quiet and semi-consciousness, rehearsing.
What's changed is the context. The problems we rehearse now aren't physical threats that resolve by morning. They're social, financial, existential. The loop doesn't close. And then we add a second layer, the awareness that we are lying awake, that we have to function in 4 hours, that this is a problem. Researchers call this sleep effort. The harder you try to sleep, the more you activate the arousal systems that prevent it.
Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBT-I, is currently the most evidence-supported intervention for chronic sleep problems, recommended over medication by guidelines including those from the American College of Physicians.
It targets this second layer specifically, not the thoughts themselves, but the relationship to the thoughts, the catastrophizing about wakefulness. What CBT-I teaches, in part, is that the 3 a.m. mind isn't broken. It's running its standard late-night program. What can change is whether you interpret that as a threat.
Which brings you back to Ekirch's pre-industrial sleepers, lying quietly in their first waking. They had no framework that told them this was wrong. The night had a middle, and the middle had its own character. Maybe the 3 a.m. mind isn't asking you to solve anything. Maybe it's just what the brain looks like when the noise stops, and there's nothing left to look at except the unfinished things.
The real problem isn't waking up. It's the story you tell yourself about it.